Good morning, everyone, and thank you for being a part of Innovation Delivered today. This panel, Ship Happens, will discuss creating anti-fragile delivery environments in networks that strengthen rather than break under stress. My name is Lauren Gute. I have the privilege to lead strategy and corporate development here at Octane, working with many of our innovative partners, customers, ecosystems to build an even stronger business for you as our customers. Today, I have the privilege to welcome a panel to discuss how in today's hyper-connected commerce landscape, shipping isn't just logistics. It's a critical relationship bridge between brands and customers that can make or break consumer loyalty. The question isn't whether disruptions will happen, but how prepared you are when they do. Peak seasons, carrier capacity crunches, and rate volatility are now permanent features of our operating environment, not exceptions. Today's discussion centers on a fundamental strategy shift, moving from single carrier dependence to developing anti-fragile delivery ecosystems. We're exploring how innovative brands and businesses are leveraging technology to create dynamic carrier networks that strengthen under stress rather than break. Our panelists bring deep operational expertise to this challenge. I'd first like to welcome John.
Hey, Lauren, how are you?
Thanks so much for joining us and for all of what you've done with operational innovations to transform supply chains for customers around the world.
Yeah, and thank you for having me on. I'm excited to share information today with everybody out in the audience and talk more in depth with my colleagues here about the future of commerce.
Wonderful. I'd like to welcome Chris Jarvis.
Hey, Lauren. Good to see everybody. Thanks for joining.
Really excited about what you've been building with e-com logistics and carrier orchestration across very large networks. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Look forward to talking about it.
I'd love to welcome Timur Iligulashvili from smallparcel.com.
Hi, Lauren. Great to be here. Thanks for having me on to talk about this critical topic.
Absolutely. Your work helping customers with carrier selection, carrier relationships clearly transforms their businesses. Lots of great knowledge from this team here today. I'd like to begin by discussing how the best businesses and brands are building to bend, to have flexibility in their carrier relationships. Maybe I'll begin with Timur. Why is carrier flexibility essential in 2025? And maybe what are some innovative ways you have seen businesses diversify and optimize their carrier mix?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think when we talk about diversifying carrier mix, we're not talking about replacing national carriers, but we are talking about reducing the dependency on those carriers. So having a mix of carriers that, when each combined are going to give that shipper the low optimized cost, maybe an insurance policy of sorts when there's a disruption in the network, and various capabilities that consumers need when they're placing the orders, such as maybe overnight, next day delivery, faster delivery into rural areas, maybe even special requirements such as signature required. Now, the one thing that everyone has to keep in mind is when you're building a diversified carrier network, a network with multiple carriers to cover each zip code in the US, with multiple service offerings at different rate structures. You don't want it to be a burden on your operations team, right? So to execute on this, shippers need to have the right technology that routes the package to the intended carrier using the service that the shipper intends. And that's going to meet that consumer's requirement for the delivery. So if you told someone's going to get delivered in 2 days, right, the technology should optimize to select the carrier and the service that's going to get it there in 2 days at the lowest cost possible. And it should be pre-programmed, right, and automated. And that way the operations team can just focus on their picking and packing and shipping and, not which carrier or service do I have to click to select in the system.
Absolutely. And Chris, I've seen you and your business do some really innovative work in some new delivery streams as well. Would you like to talk a little on that?
Yeah, I mean, just to step back for 1 second, Lauren. I mean, I think today flexibility in your network's a competitive advantage, right? And it certainly means that it's not just about speed and low cost, right? Consumer expectations are rising, and what this means is ultimately those demands in e-commerce first era are requiring us to look at the problem in different ways. We've got to get adaptable. We got to get flexible. It used to be that we just ran after price and speed. That's all that matters. I think what we're talking about here is how do you leverage technology? That's a major enabler that we've created, that multi-carrier routing engines, evaluating every shipment in real time, factoring more than just price. We're looking at SLAs, we're looking at traffic patterns, we're even looking at customer preferences. How do they want the experience to translate at their doorstep or at some other location of their choosing, all becoming important and only really made possible by technology. And so it's no longer all eggs in one basket. It's about what do you do well? What does this person do well? And why are those things true? And how do we bring visibility to that? And how do we track it? So for us at Ecom, it's become more and more a requirement to look regionally. Who are my regional players? What are my national players doing? And what lanes do they do well? And what lanes do other people maybe augment that, supplement that? And certainly, yeah, it's critical for us to keep that business continuity angle on this thing at this point.
Absolutely, especially under stress or under unusual circumstances, carrier disruptions, strikes, those types of things, having those options predetermined, extremely valuable. And John, you and your team have done a lot of work with customers, really intentionally developing and designing this framework. Do you want to speak a little to that?
Yeah, for sure. So I know I'm wearing white today, but I'm going to be like the black sheep of a lot of these positions because I think that technology, while it's been amazing and given a lot of optionality, more often than not, people are just being lazy with it. And really, when you think about innovation and when you're thinking about flexibility for the future, it's how do I use these tools to do exactly what I want and what works best for me and for my business, right? So that means your rules, your carriers, your reasons for using them. You know, Chris talked about price. Of course, you can always go for price, but there is so much more than that. So a flexible network is really about saying, I now have the capability and the ability to design my execution and design my customer experience exactly the way that I want it. So now I'm going to take ownership of that, and that's what I'm going to do. So that to me is a lot more of what flexibility is today, and really the way that I encourage the clients I'm working with to think about it for the future.
Yeah, especially as a business grows or gets additional complexity, thinking ahead for how to build a resilient network, have optionality, ensure that your operations team can work within that framework. That's all extremely valuable. Good. A second area we hope to discuss today is on delivery disruptions. And there are common shipping failures that brands often run into, especially again under conditions of stress, peak season, changes in the carrier operating environment. I'd love to talk through how businesses can build a network that stays strong when disruptions hit. Maybe I'll begin with Chris. Do you want to talk a little bit about some of the more common shipping failures you see and how brands and businesses can react?
Yeah, sure. I mean, they're endless, right? I tend to think about these failures in three buckets. You got operational delays, you got visibility breakdowns, and you've got external shocks to the system. So operational breakdowns, they happen all the time, either due to weather, carrier capacity crunches, simple peak season overloads of the system are all what I would deem as operational. And you need to be thinking about how do you react to each and every one of those. And we just talked about, you know, bringing in adaptability and really getting the transparency to deal with those operationally. But, you know, in the heat of battle, when volumes are surging, how do you cut over to a carrier? How do you change it? How do you start sorting differently on the outbound dock? You know, the FedEx truck, the Purelator truck, they come at certain times of the day. What if I need an additional pickup? What then? What if they don't show up? What if they run over? What if they come early? All operational delays. Beyond that, I think about failures happening in visibility breakdowns. Things get stuck in the system. They don't get out of the warehouse. They get delayed at customs. They get misrouted. They end up somewhere else. How do you know? What are the signals? What are the notifications that are helping you react in real time to those exception alerts? And I think there's predictive analysis today, and, you know, no shortage of AI tools that will come to bear on these problems, flagging, alerting, and error-proofing those processes through great visibility, but really getting that underlying data network assembled is some of the stuff that we think is absolutely critical for our merchant success. And then the last one, external shocks. We've got no shortage of this. I'm in Toronto, Canada. We just got through or in a Canada Post strike. There's geopolitical issues on the rise, tariffs, and those are the wild cards. So again, back to question one, our initial conversation here, building resilience and having a playbook beyond the everyday, giving you the resilience in your network is super critical. I think supply chains are always adapting and changing to market forces. That'll be forever a norm, and we need to be able to adjust and error-proof and reduce failures through those exceptions. But so operationally, visibility and external shocks to the system are all things that we're worried about. So powering foresight and having proactive analytics tuned in that kind of way has been really helpful for us and helpful for our merchants, letting them make greater decisions on the fly, but having them also get the notification and insights. I mean, we're dealing with, at times, tens or hundreds of thousands of transactions, right? Shipments. And it's like, how do you bucket these together and bring them to a platform that you can actually make operational decisions on both sides? Because it's not just the 3PL. We're a 3PL, and obviously our merchants have a great deal of say over how they operate their business and how their customer experiences their brand. What we need to do is take this extreme amount of data and get it. Was it an operational delay? Again, was it a visibility or disruption within the network, or was it an external shock? And how do we serve that up as an aggregate to really get insights and trends?
Absolutely. And John, many of the viewers today may be beginning with one major carrier, maybe one big contract, one way of doing things. As you coach businesses on beginning this change, what are some of the things that they need to be aware of or be thinking about?
Yeah, for sure. So there's two main areas that I will share and get a lot of focus on. The first is kind of getting away from this thinking that everything and everyone is the same. Logistics and fulfillment especially is very commoditized business. So it's easy to just feel that, everyone who's put up their sign is doing things the same way or equally well. And what makes it more confusing is that everyone will say that they're performing as well and use the same metrics as everyone else. I don't know how many times, you've seen the 99.9% SLA kind of claims. So that's the first thing that people really need to understand. And then the second thing is commitments, right? And when to make the right commitments. So the brands and the retailers that I work with that have the most success are the ones that really appreciate that not everything is the same. So it means that maybe every area or every geography that they sell in is not the same. It might mean that different package profiles or different times of year are obviously not the same. And that doesn't just mean, your pure peak season, but what is the seasonality in that sense of your business and what your customers want throughout, whatever your cycle might be. And then also understanding the fact that you can't just move everything from channel A into channel B and then to channel C, right? Like everything is not equal, and options don't mean actual performance. So really understanding that and taking hold of it and understanding what are your really important things, what you really need to watch and where you're going to put those versus what might be a little bit more fringe or tail and has a little bit more ability to absorb some friction. So that's super important. The other thing is commitments. Too often brands and retailers will hedge. They overhedge, right? They're really comfortable with what they're doing. They have a system that works. It works most of the time. Of course, now they're dealing with some kind of disruption, dealing with some kind of delay, whether it's from the carrier, whether it's from the market, the weather, whatever. But realistically, as you want to move away from one carrier, the best thing that you can do for yourself is to make a commitment, right? It's hard to get strong performance. It's hard to get a strong partnership if that other person, i.e. those other carriers that you may be considering using, don't feel that you're really committed to them. They need to grow and they need the stability and the performance just as much as you do. So instead of just a spray and pray where you might fire everything through like a random and unorganized rate shop, you ask yourself, how can you actually intentionally move volume to certain channels, to certain partners, and then work with them so that they understand, hey, this is what I'm moving you. This is my expectation. I will more or less guarantee. I know the guarantee is a little bit heavy, but if you can say, I will give you 30% of my volume, I will give you, 70% of my volume in this geography. You want to make those commitments, because then all of a sudden you become more interesting, you can become a better partner, and that carrier will do more to work with you and really find solutions that are mutually beneficial. So that is something that, too many people wait too long for. And then when the house is finally burning, everyone's running around and wondering why they can't get people to agree to take their business. So those two things I think are hyper important for everyone out there if you want to have a more resilient fulfillment and go-to-market strategy in the future.
Absolutely. And that's a good overlap between the technology and business element and also the relationship element that helps when the chips are down and you need some flexibility to make sure your customer promise is kept. And Timur, some of these shipping failures happen not really on the carrier end, they happen on the order management system, even the shopping cart end. Are there some other tactics that you have thought about to help eliminate shipping failures by getting better on the front end?
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that I've really been keen on and focused in on is that the disruptions don't just disruptions have become table stakes, right? We hear about them. I feel like every year there's one or two major disruptions or about to be disruptions. And so we don't know when to expect them, but we do expect, at least one or two a year. As we've just kind of brought up the case that's happening in Canada. However, to your point, one of the things that I'm looking at is, and I'm seeing shippers having the most failures in the last 100 feet. And so what I mean by that is, the package gets shipped, it's going out for delivery. The driver is about 100 feet away from making that delivery based on the address that's provided. They get there and it's, the wrong address, or, hey, the customer moved, or, hey, it's an apartment complex and it's building 14. I have no idea which one's building 14. So how do I make the delivery? And so they drive around for 20 minutes and can't find it, and they leave. And so, those type of shipping disruptions are something that, can make or break, or at least errors can make or break a delivery. And, one thing that retailers and brands don't want is they don't want to fail delivery, because the delivery is basically an extension of their brand, right? So you're excited about a product that you just ordered for the first time. It's your first experience with the brand. The last thing you want is for it to not get delivered. And so, one of the things that that I'm seeing retailers, shippers do is starting to implement address validation. So up front, trying to ensure that they have the right location that they're going to ship to. Trying to ask their customers if there is any special instructions. So maybe it's a business that they're shipping to and it's closed, it's only open between the hours of 8 to 6. So getting that information and pulling that information into their system so they can pass that on to the carrier. And then, to John's point, it's a team effort, right? You got to have commitments on both sides. So communication is a team effort too. It's a two-way street. And so if the shipper can communicate all those details to that carrier, the carrier is more likely to have a successful delivery if they know which gate to go through, where that building's located, if they have the right address. And so all of that to say that if we can have a successful delivery, the chances of that consumer coming back and placing a repeat order are much greater than if they have a bad experience on the front end.
Love that. Just Lauren, just to chime in, I think back to what John said just for one sec. It's definitely not one size fits all anymore. And it's Timur, what you said, it's really about how do you get first delivery right the first time, and how do you create that dynamic platform, that dynamic system where we can have two-way communication in real time. So at Ecom, one of our platform allows you to do just that. You can interact, you can put notes, you can leave buzzer codes, you can provide information to whoever that carrier is to get it right the first time. But I think ultimately it's not a static cost center anymore. It's a dynamic environment that needs oversight, and it needs the ability at scale to interact down to the order level, but then also zoom back out and zoom back in. It's becoming much more normal.
Absolutely. Many brands listening today will be planning for the peak around the holiday season coming at the end of 2025. But for many other customers, businesses peak at other times of the year, whether summer or around other holidays or around certain business cycles. John, how should brands approach planning for those high volume seasons, maybe upcoming rate shifts, as we have seen numerous times across the US majors this year, and global instability while keeping customers happy?
That's like probably the most loaded question that we had put on there. So there's a couple of things. First thing, I think, and this is my own personal philosophy with this, being someone who ran a lot of delivery networks and stuff, you really need to appreciate the fact that no matter whose system you're using, whose network it is, and Chris and I have talked about this before, there is a mechanical capacity. At some point, this infrastructure can only do so much at any given time. And of course, you can add people, you add buildings, you add trucks, whatever, but at some point there are always bottlenecks. So really understanding the fact that while you're focused on your business and you're working through your information and your planning, so is everybody else. And a lot of people do share similar peak periods, which means there's a lot of activity happening at the same time. So you want to be ultra transparent with your partners, with yourselves, and with your planning. You really want to know why you're predicting the sales that you are, and make sure that they have a strong degree of realism. Very often when it comes to traditional peak season, for example, Q4, people fall in love with the wonder and the what if of having just like a massive season. And that definitely happens. But, more often than not, you're going to have increased sales, but nothing that's so astronomically incredible that, you 10x your sales or 100x your sales. So you need to really understand what it is that you're doing and why. Because if you overplan and you overcommit and you jam up your system, you're going to find that you're going to have challenges that way. On the flip side too, you want to be very mindful and aware if for whatever reason, maybe, your manufacturer couldn't get product in time. Maybe your lead times are too long. Maybe things are really sort of touch and go with the way products coming in. Be very responsive to, what you expect your sales increase to be and what that actual inventory is that you're dealing with, and sort of have contingencies both ways. Like, what am I going to start doing if it sells really well? And what am I going to start doing if it doesn't sell really well, or at least sell at the pace or the rate that I was expecting? So those two things are super important. The other thing that I think is more important these days, especially if you want to leverage the power of social commerce, is finding different channels and different ways to interact with customers, right? You may want to find ways to have in some of your strongest markets more local inventory. Maybe that's partnering with an independent store. Maybe that's having another small warehouse space that's specifically for one type of ordering. Or maybe it is opening up that second or third inventory location ahead of time to make sure that you have sort of a stronger presence in those areas that you really want to sell. But at the end of the day, you want to make sure that you're sharing all of this information with your partners, that you understand why everyone is doing that, and also get that feedback and commitments of like, are you stressing their system too much, or at what point do you stress their system, which I think is a question most people don't ask enough. Everyone will take the yes because we love to hear it. Oh, I can take more. I have unlimited capacity. You see a lot of carriers claiming this, especially with the gig model. It's not true. At some point, everybody runs into the wall. So you really want to understand that from your partners if you want to have real peak season success, because then that'll allow you to make more effective and efficient decisions. And at the end of the day, keep your customer experience high because they hold you accountable for it, not your 3PL and not your delivery partner.
Yeah. Timur, a lot of that you can plan for, and some of it you just can't. Maybe as you've worked with customers, how have you seen them evolve through a peak season and make the changes they need to?
Yeah, so I'd say peak season, from what I've seen from some of the best, right? We're talking about like the top tier shippers that are just great at communicating with their carriers, great at building those key partnerships so that their carriers really care about that retailer's peak season and success. Is that for them, it's, peak prep is 80% design and it's like 20% firefighting. So it's not the opposite. It's not like, hey, let's get into peak, and when there's issues that come up, I'll get in touch with my partner and we'll figure it out. It's the other way around. Let's plan to succeed. The first thing to do that is getting an alignment between the partners. So the shipper and the carrier getting into alignment. And that requires that the shipper, the retailer, the brand provide carriers with their forecast for peak season. What are they shipping? What are their volumes going to look like? Is it on a weekly basis, on a daily basis? If they can get that granular, and commit to handling that volume, get that commitment from the carriers. It's really important to have that kind of handshake, right? At the very least. And now everyone knows what's going to happen, how much volume is going to come into the carrier's network, and how much volume the carrier is committed to delivering. Just completely super important. And throughout peak season, keep them updated, right? So if things change, if all of a sudden a certain product takes off, or you're behind on inventory and you need to you need to increase your volume on certain days, decrease on other days, keep your partners updated. I think that's the best thing we could do, is to stay in very close communication between the shipper and the carriers. And look, when you have that diversified carrier network, the other thing I would say is, and we talked a little bit about cost up front. I mentioned cost, but I think it's another important thing to stress, because one thing we see is, with the volume increases, some carriers will take a demand surcharge or peak surcharge, and in general, costs may go up or will go up. And that diversified carrier network, tying it back to that first question, the build to bend and building that diversified carrier network, is having flexibility will help you be able to allocate volume to reduce the impact of those peak surcharges that are being passed along to you. And that could help save money. And that's, I think, really important for everyone doing business today. They're always looking at their bottom line. So one, they want to have success. To do that, have great communication and expectation setting. And then two is, once you have that diversified carrier network, you've got a lot more flexibility to think about optimizing based on cost as well.
Absolutely. And that's a great example, again, of where technology and the carrier cost relationship gets better when you have real connections, human connections. You're taking the time to update them on changes in your business or sales that exceeded your expectations, and you're preparing them for their expectations inside their carrier as well.
Exactly.
Excellent. And then Chris, from the very first time we met, you've been talking with me a lot about ecosystems and building out anti-fragile networks. As you've worked with customers and build around peak or around changes and disruptions, what are a few things you'd guide?
Yeah, I'll chime in with, and pick up where we just left off. And add to it. I think defining your strategy for peak. I think we'd all agree that there's like the normal course of business, and then there's what are we going to do in peak. And so you create inevitably a strategy, a playbook for peak. I don't think it can be understated or said enough. We need to tell our partners and our merchants, what is our playbook? What is our strategy? What are we going to do first, second, third? If certain things happen, who are we going to work with? And do we already have those relationships set up if we need them, if and when we need them? And then Timur said, about forecasting. Yeah, we need to get pen to paper and do the heavy lifting. But we're definitely moving away from historical data into predictive analytics, right? We are now thinking about demand sensing models that can detect signals from social trends to weather to even regional disruptions, and bringing those back as a forward-looking predictive model. Long gone are the days that the last peak will represent itself again. And we're down to the day, the week of, the hour of the day. The surges are there, and we need to understand those in a go forward way. I think brands that ultimately win and 3PL partners that take care of their brands well are 6 months planning before peak, not 6 weeks. We are way out in the future, and we're running scenarios around that. So it's it's about resilience, flexibility, and transparency. And just communicating that trifecta, right? Who's doing what are we going to do? How are we going to make decisions? And then what models and information are we using to really determine our actions around that? I think the more you can get aware of those things and socialize them to your network, it's best laid plans. It sounds cliche, but it's It's about predictive now. It's about simulating the future. It's about anticipating and teaching the organization and the partners you interact with and your shippers how you will make decisions and what they can expect from your actions. I think that'll go a long way. And I don't think we're always there, but it comes down to being proactive, and 6 months is a good portion of the year. So there's just never enough hours in the day to not be planning for peak throughout the year.
Absolutely. And for everyone listening, I know that we all wish you a very successful peak season ahead. I'm really appreciative to John and Chris and Timur for sharing some actionable insights at the intersection of innovation, logistics, and customer connectivity. If today sparked some new ideas, I know any of us would be very happy to connect with you in the future. Those of you who work with us at ShipStation, we'd love to connect around some of these ideas and sure we're helping your planning around peak seasons and future disruptions. We have a number of very exciting technical demos on the latest that we've launched here, and a number of other exciting breakout sessions and keynote speakers here across innovation delivered today. I'm excited for everyone to continue building what's next and really appreciate the expertise of these panelists to help us all do exactly that. Thank you all for your time today.